Hello and welcome back to the Stories of Northern Life podcast, brought to you by the Sault Ste. Marie Museum. I'm your host, Nicole, and today I bring you another book review. So the book that we're going to be looking at today is Guardians of Peace. So this is all about a history of the Sault Ste. Marie Police Force. This book was published in 1987, and it was written by Robert Bostelar. And so it covers the sort of early history of the police force in Sault Ste. Marie, our little village before we even became a town. And it's the first chapter is called A Force in the Wilds. So here we're starting around 1856. And so if you have ever been to the Old Stone House and you've gone up to the second floor, you've probably maybe seen or read a little bit about the history of Richard Carney. And Richard Carney was actually the first sheriff here in Sault Ste. Marie. So that's sort of where we sort of start with our police force, is when Sheriff Richard Carney is finally appointed. And you can actually see here that we then have a picture of the Old Stone House, because Carney purchased this home for his family home. But then the following year, we had the first judge appointed to the Algoma district. And if you know your Sault Ste. Marie history, or you've heard a few of our past episodes, you know I am talking about Colonel John Prince. So he came and he converted this into the first courthouse and jail. So our first sheriff had to share his home with the courthouse and the jail. And so we're sort of going through here. We have Major Joseph Wilson. So he's more of the federal force that was coming in. And then we have here Colonel John Prince. So at that point, it was sort of just a mixture of who was sort of taking care of the sort of policing of the area, because we still didn't quite have an official municipal police force, because here we're looking at going into 1871, and still at this time we are not even a town. So we didn't become a town until 1888, which interesting fact, is also the year that the International Train Bridge was completed. So this next point here is talking a little bit more how we're sort of becoming more official. This is when we have the first courthouse being built and the jail, and this is on the this was built on the original grounds of the courthouse today. So it was just a little bit farther forward, probably I would think a little bit more where the cenotaph is. So a little bit closer to the road, because when they built the new courthouse, they built it in behind. So I think that was just sort of the way that they were doing it around this time, is you had the main structure, and then when you're building something new, it would be farther back and behind, so that the main front structure could still be functional. But yes, here is our first courthouse and jail. And in the picture, there's a few of the officers. It doesn't say who exactly is in this picture, but in some of them I do know we have pictures of Sheriff Carney in front of there. And then here we go into chapter 3, and it's called Growing Town, Growing Duties. So 1887, and so this is right before we are becoming a town. So they have to sort of now get ready to set up an official police force for the town. And as I was saying, here's our international train bridge completed in 1888 as well. So we're having an even larger link with the states. So we wanted to have a little bit better of a sort of local security. And throughout this book, it's kind of interesting. They have these little sort of boxes, and they have their own little snippets of history. So here we have a picture of Constable A.B. McLean here on the right, and it's a little thing called Missing Mother. And so it says, good detective work paid off for Constable A.B. McLean in 1896. One morning, a Mrs. Stewart opened her door and discovered a baby that had been left on her step. She was happy to look after the child, but asked the town council to provide $5 a month for its care. Counselors, unwilling to support a foundling until adulthood, offered a $10 award to anyone who could locate the child's mother. After some weeks, McLean discovered the woman's identity and informed the council. Town records revealed that he received the $10, but do not disclose what happened to the baby or the mother. So there are sort of just those little interesting snippets of history that you have in there. Sort of like this one here. This one's a little bit bigger, talking sort of more about the uniforms, how they were sort of changing, and then continuation of that. And then we move on to chapter 4, which we're going into the next century, the 1900s, and this is called Wild North. And so we're just sort of looking at, again, the early history of the police force. Here we have a picture of the 1903 Clark riots, and this is where they had to send up the troops from Toronto so that they could help quell the riots. But by the time those soldiers came, the riot was already done. And chapter 5 is a personal interest. So we move on to 1911. So you can see more of our police officers here, the nice old pictures. And so we're just sort of going through police board first, I guess, sort of officially proposed in 1907. And then here we have chapter 6, The Hot Seat, 1921. And so you can see more of the police officers here. And then talking about how their mode of transportation started to change. So here we have an officer on a motorbike. So instead of the horses, here is more of the police car. And then here we have the fleet of police cars. And then chapter 7 is discussing the hardship decade. So this is 1932, and this is when we're sort of going to be getting into the Great Depression, and times are going to be tough on everybody. And so here you can see a lot of the police officers sort of hear their stories of whether or not they joined up or how they were helping to take care of the Sioux during the war. And so here, yeah, there's just a lot of really interesting pictures and information. Talking about how when we had special visits, they would have to make plans. So the different royal visits that were here, all the plans and prep that our police force would have to do to make sure it was safe. And then here we have Chapter 9, A New Home, 1950. So before that, the police didn't really have their own police station. For a time, they were actually in the basement of the courthouse. And if we look right here at this picture, you can actually see that this gentleman right there, this is Edgar Noel Curry, and this is actually my grandpa. So he served in the police force in the early 1950s, and he was actually there when he was working in the basement of the courthouse, and that is where he met my grandma when she was a court reporter. And you can see here, this is the Albert Street police station that opened in June 1957. So finally the police have their first official standalone police station. And then here, keep going. And we have another little snippet of John Rhodes, friend, policeman, cabinet minister. And this one is an interesting little story here, solution to a 15-year mystery. So I'll read this for you. It's pretty interesting. So we have a lot of these pictures here in the Sioux of this car being pulled out of the water. For 15 years, the disappearance of Earl and Dolly Kirk remained a mystery. On October 4th, 1940, the North Bay Oil Company salesman and his wife loaded the family Plymouth, kissed their 4 young children goodbye, and set out for a 3-week holiday in Manitoba. They didn't come back as scheduled, and mail sent to them in Winnipeg was returned unopened. Police were called in, but could find no trace of the couple. Customs at the Sioux had no record of the Kirks crossing the river by ferry to the United States, the usual route to Western Canada. The case remained open. In October 1955, a Sioux man disappeared from his home. Police noticed marks on the government dock that could have come from a car tailpipe. Dragging operations on October 19th brought up a car hood. It didn't match the car of the missing Sioux man. It did match the Kirk's Plymouth. A driver located the car in the river mud 5 meters from the dock. Word spread quickly, and hundreds gathered at the dock to witness what could be the solution to Northern Ontario's most celebrated mystery. A lighthouse tender, C.P. Edwards, was brought into the slip, and divers hooked its boom to the car. The car, encrusted in slime, broke the surface. A crew member from the Edwards read out the 1940 Ontario license number 13-W-61. The next day's Sioux Star quoted Inspector Cliff Buchanan as saying quietly, "That's it." The dock was cleared of spectators as Chief I.L. Robertson approached the car. He first tried the front door on the passenger side. Then, when it didn't open, the back door on the same side. Opening it just a few inches, the chief turned and said, "They're in here." A few days later, police recovered the body of the man they were originally searching for in his car in the river. His death was ruled as suicide. Police believe the Kirks headed down what was then the CPR dock, mistaking it for the ferry dock a few blocks west. The car's ignition was on and the gear selector in reverse, indicating they tried to back around to turn and, in the dark or fog, misjudged the edge of the dock and backed off. The solution to the mystery drew drew widespread publicity and caused much discussion at the 4th annual convention of the Chief Constables Association of Ontario, which opened in Sault Ste. Marie 3 days later. So there is a pretty interesting story from this book. And just as we're keeping going through, we can see that they had a children's safety patrol. And then in chapter 10, we have the tough challenges of 1964. And then starting to talk about policing in the townships. And here we are seeing that they're starting construction on the new police station. So this is the one up on Second Line, and this opened in January 1970. And so here you can see the police force is growing. Here you can see that the police started to get involved in the community. They had hockey teams. And here they're showing off some of their gear that they have. And then here they are at this is a photo just in front of Arthur Funeral Home, and it says officers from 6 forces at funeral of Sioux Constable Gary Baumhauer, who died in an off-duty car accident in 1974. Then we have Birth of a Tradition, 1978. So here you can see more of our police force. And then finally we're talking about women on the force. So we actually have some episodes that we did a few years ago for Women's History Month, and one of the people that we talk about is Constable Lois Beckett, who we can see here on traffic duty in Terran Taurus. So we have a few notable policewomen here in Sault Ste. Marie. Here we have Chapter 12, Preparing for the Future, 1987. And so we're getting sort of close to, I guess, modern day when this book was written. And here we can see that now we're getting into the acknowledgements. So here, this is the list of the Sault Ste. Marie Police Force in 1987. So we can see at the time the chief of the police was Barry King, and then it has the inspectors, staff sergeants, constables, and civilian members. And then we even have a breakdown of the organizational structure in the police force, so that we can see how the police is sort of all laid out. And then here we have a list of former police officers and staff. And right here you can see there's my grandfather's name, Edgar Noel Curry. And that is the end of the book. So this is a pretty good book, going through the whole sort of history of the police force in Sault Ste. Marie up until 1987. We actually received a big collection from the police force. So when they moved into their new police station in 1970, in there they had a little police museum, and in that museum they had a lot of the old tools that they used. One thing that I think is really cool is the doing the sort of perp sketches. So when they were trying to create a likeness of the suspect. So they would have a witness choose from a bunch of different transparent films and or sheets, and they would have different face shapes, different eye shapes, different noses, different mouths, everything like that, different facial hair, different hair, and they were able to lay those on top of each other and create the face that way. So if you come into the Sault Ste. Marie Museum, you will be able to see our small display. We have from the police, and this is just some of the artifacts that we received from them. One of the other artifacts we received is the big Elmer, the safety elephant mascot. So if you're a kid in the 80s, 90s, I think maybe early 2000s, they still had him. Do you remember Elmer, the safety elephant, that big mascot that they had? I remember him coming to our school. I'm not sure if anyone else out there remembers him, but that is one of the other artifacts we have. But yeah, this book, if you want to learn more about the police in Sault Ste. Marie, how they got started and how they sort of went from sort of just a really small, out of the way rural police force to the official municipal police force that we have now. This book is pretty good. It doesn't give you sort of that more modern perspective, but it is everything up until, as I said, 1987. I'm not entirely sure where you can buy this book, but I know that they'll probably have copies in the library, things like that. So this is another book to be on the lookout for your local history. So I hope you sort of like this series where we're doing book reviews of books about the local history of Sault Ste. Marie. And so next week, we might be doing another book review, but stay tuned for that. And as always, thanks for listening. Bye.
Have you been to your local museum lately? Visit us at the Sault Ste. Marie Museum, located in downtown Sault Ste. Marie, the one with the big clock tower on the top. Our hours of operation are 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Tuesday to Saturday. We have 3 floors of exhibits that we constantly work on updating. The whole family is welcome, as we have activity sheets and scavenger hunts with prizes for every kiddo, a discovery gallery full of hands-on learning, and more interactive elements scattered throughout the museum. And don't forget to come say hi and let us know you're a listener of the podcast.